everybody, John Kublank here with Off the Cuff, all things healthcare, and I have the honor to co-host with Arlene, Maxim. And actually, interestingly enough, I got a phone call from the governor of Michigan. The entire state has dropped like 5 degrees colder because of Arlene moving out of the state. Her warmth and her. Yeah. It is awesome to have you here, Arlene, with us. And we have a big show. A lot of people on the screen today. Can you introduce one of our special guests?
I will. And, you're always so nice to me and say such nice things about me. But, I've got I'm technically disadvantaged. So John is the one who actually is the work behind the scenes here and takes care of it. I'm just here to talk. So, but thank you so much. That's what we need you for.
We need that brain.
Well, I am just delighted to have our guests here today. And I'm going to go start out by introducing Tim McNelly. And Tim is part of Home Rehab Network. And they're based out of Maryland. So he and Dr. Shah have a program that they put together, and they have some folks with them. And I'm going to turn this over to Tim. We are happy to take any questions anyone has during this podcast. This is going to be geared toward decreasing rehospitalization. And most of you know that some of the top 10 reasons that rehospitalizations occur are because of COPD, CHF. CHF is one of the largest ones, but the respiratory and cardiopulmonary diseases are driving people back to these rehospitalizations. So we're going to get some exciting information about how we can prevent all of that, and we can get our outcome scores. Value-based purchasing scores can increase. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tim, and we're so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you, Arlene. I appreciate that. So my name is Tim McNelly, and I am actually the Vice President of Cardiopulmonary Services for Lifetime Vitality. And we are partnering with Home Rehab Network to form a new venture. And that venture is called LVHRN. So let me just give you a little insight before I introduce the rest of the guests. So Lifetime Vitality is a partner in long-term home care. We provide virtual OT, PT, speech language pathology, and respiratory services. We are also facility-based, but along with that, we also provide remote patient monitoring, remote therapeutic monitoring, chronic care management, and telehealth services. So what we've done is we've partnered with the premier provider for cardiac and pulmonary rehab that is nationally recognized as the premier provider, and that's Home Rehab Network, to form this new venture, LVHRN. We know that home health, as clinicians, we know that home health is facing a lot of issues with OASIS and with hospital readmissions and emergency room visits. And we know from our outcome data that we certainly have a solution for the problem. We can manage patients by educating them and doing other things with these patients through virtual services that we can show dramatic decreases in hospitalizations and ER visits. So it's exciting for me to introduce the founding members of Home Rehab Network. Alex Verchuin, who is the Chief Executive Officer for Home Rehab Network. Dr. Naveed Shah, who is the Chief Medical Officer for Home Rehab Network. And Abby Cohen, who is the manager of Home Rehab Network, who I know is our contact when we're trying to get things coordinated. So it's exciting to talk about this. We know from a respiratory care perspective that we have some options with these patients. And, we have white papers, we've done lectures on this. We know this program works, and it's all about touching the lives of these patients and improving their quality of life. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alex, and we can go from there.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So in HRN, the number one thing that we always want to make sure is not just patients get better, but also the decrease in hospital readmission rates. We started this program in 2016 and 2017 in December when we first started. I worked with Dr. Shah, and we were working at the skilled nursing facility. and patients were returning home not ready. And when they were going home, some of them returned back to the hospital. Some even actually would pass away because they weren't ready to go home. So Dr. Shah and I kind of got together and started up a program that was a virtual program. So far we've dropped hospital. I'm not sure if anybody knows how what's the outcomes of hospital readmission rates, but it's usually around 30% average. We dropped hospital readmission rates down to 2.4%, which makes us the lowest for hospital readmission rates. Now, of course, with HRN, we provide pulmonary and cardiac rehabilitation, but specifically pulmonary rehabilitation right now as we're gaining a little bit more into the cardiac aspect of it. But with pulmonary rehab, we have a 98% satisfaction rate, as our compliance rate is also at 98.7%, which makes us a very, very good program altogether. Now, what do I mean by a good program? So a lot of people will ask, you have, let's say you have 2 pulmonary rehabs. Okay, what makes one better than the other? A lot of people say convenience and things of that nature, but what about results? What if you go into a pulmonary rehab and you stay the same or you even get worse? And we found that to be very common. So our pulmonary rehab, we don't strive for maintaining anybody when they first come in. We want to try to transform them, getting them when they only were able to walk like a couple feet to getting them to walk a couple hundred feet. That's what we want. Getting them to breathe easier, understanding medication management, and so on and so forth. And the one thing that we've also added into our pulmonary rehab program was the use of a Delta V. Has anybody ever heard of respiratory muscle training?
I have not.
Okay. So with respiratory muscle training, it's one of the key things in pulmonary rehab. A good respiratory muscle training that works out your intercostal and diaphragmatic muscles gets you to strengthen up your lungs better so you can breathe in deeper. When you find a lot of people breathing shallow and they're wondering why they get so out of breath so quickly, if we increase the muscle, if we increase those muscles, educating them of how to breathe and walk. And we do that with a Delta V. So we use a Delta V. It's a respiratory muscle trainer that has a dial setting. And the number one thing about it, it has a flow meter setting. So basically you attach it to an incentive spirometer, looking at the flow meter on the incentive spirometer, and you would breathe in and out, increasing intercostal and diaphragmatic muscle strengthening. It's one of the key things that we do in our pulmonary rehab, as we found a lot of pulmonary rehabs. What they'll do is just put them into physical therapy, put them on a treadmill, and 1 or 2 minutes in, they will stop them because their oxygen drops or their heart rate spikes all the way spikes very high. And then the patient itself, might seem a little, overwhelmed, or might seem that, okay, maybe me going into rehab, going straight onto a treadmill is not a great idea. Well, of course not, because you're working on your legs and you should be working on your lungs. That's what pulmonary rehab should be doing, is working and rehabilitating the lungs, not just the legs. But in our pulmonary rehab program, we work out from head to toe, even stress management. We have, our physical, our strength training, even also stress management, yoga, Tai Chi, you name it, we have it. But the number one thing that we can't take away from is the patient engagement. So patients don't have to travel. They don't have to travel. They could stay home, and even if they're not technologically savvy, okay, even if if they don't understand technology, that's okay. Because we can either teach them how to use it, and we do have that program where we can teach them how to get into Zoom, how to get out of Zoom. And a lot of people already know how to do that, but some people are not up to that par, And when they're in group settings, you have people that are like diseased, meaning you have 2 people that have COPD, you have and they're all the age range is around the same. The disease types are about the same, so they can kind of, not just collaborate, but speak to one another and say, hey, how did you do that? And stuff like that. So it's been a the social experience is incredible, just incredible, not just the outcomes, but the engagement itself. And we've developed a wonderful program that actually not just works, but has just been flawless.
I think the beauty of this too, and one of the things as a clinician both hospital-based and now outside of the hospital. When patients are discharged to home and you tell them, okay, you have to come back for your cardiac or your pulmonary rehab, access to care is a huge issue. I mean, when you're looking at rural environments, it's difficult sometimes for patients to get there. But even in the cities, if you're asking a patient to stand on the corner and wait for a bus in order to come to the hospital to do this, it just doesn't happen.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, speaking for all of us, I think, you know, if we look at the one positive thing that has happened with COVID, and God knows there were many horrible things that happened. But I think one of the things that we saw with COVID is that, you know, using virtual services certainly works. But we also know that prior to COVID, there were about 800 cardiac and pulmonary rehab programs around the country. And now, after COVID, there are less than 200 facility-based programs. So even if patients could get to the hospital, those hospitals may not, in fact, have a program. So, you know, we're able to provide this anywhere, any part of the country, virtually. And, you know, along with the other services, OT, PT, and speech, we can blend all these programs together that if we need to do a physical therapy consult prior to the start of someone starting rehab, we have the ability to do that. So marrying our organizations together was certainly the right thing to do as we just enhance this program even more.
Absolutely.
Real quick, I just want to, Michelle Forsyth is sending in a bunch of comments. She said, Alex is great. How can I follow all of you, please? I'm sure at some point we'll put up a website and all that good stuff. And she also said, as a COPD patient, when she's doing deep breathing, it loosens up her stomach. So I guess she's just chiming in on what she's hearing, and hopefully we'll have a lot more to give Michelle as we get started. But Dr. Shah, we haven't heard from you. As a provider, as a practitioner, how do you feel about this virtual environment, and how do you think it helps with our patients?
I think there's multiple levels where it really helps. I think access is one of them, as Tim mentioned. You know, after COVID, because of the restrictions, less than 10% really have remained, and you can only fit so many people in a rehab program in a building, right? There's so many people that can go in there, so that there's a lot of wait time. There's wait lists. You know, some of these programs are 6 months out, and you imagine somebody coming out of the hospital really needs, to be worked on and to be educated. 6 months is detrimental. It's not attainable. So what we've done, and I always say this, we've basically built a better mousetrap. I always say that, and basically what I mean is the logistical hurdles to a regular rehab. And mind you, we have patients in rural New Mexico. We have patients in the mountains of Colorado, right? And they tell me, look, my doctor is 3 hours away. I mean, do you want me to go 3 times a week to a rehab? I spoke with a patient in Peoria, Illinois. She was just outside of the town, and she said it's an hour each way for me to go. Like, now I have to lug along my oxygen, and then the oxygen is also finite. How long is that oxygen tank going to last? And then when you get there, and to Alex's point, you get on a treadmill, 35, 40 minutes later, you get off the treadmill and you go home, right? That's pulmonary rehab in a nutshell. Before, our pulmonary rehab is basically 1 part education, 1 part exercise, and 1 part psychological coddling in a way. So what I mean by that is we're educating the patient. We will go over, different exercises of breathing, how to breathe and walk, how to breathe and go upstairs, how to breathe and go up inclines, how to breathe when you're in the grocery shopping, how to breathe when you're in the mall. All right. We're going to go over lung anatomy. What does a lung look like? What are the muscles around the lungs, the diaphragm? How are they working? How's the heart contributing? And then we'll go into diet, nutrition. One of the determiners of how well people do in chronic disease state is diet and nutrition. And loss of muscle mass is huge, and people don't realize that. I lost some weight. I was in the hospital. I lost 5 pounds. That's 5 pounds of weight you didn't want to lose, because that's 5 pounds of muscle mass. So we do diet, nutrition. And then we have harmonica therapy. We have balance classes. We have weightlifting, aerobics. We have Tai Chi. We have yoga. We have stretching. And we are able to also modify these programs and these exercises, because not everybody has a great back. They maybe have back problems. Maybe they have osteoporosis. Maybe they can't sit or stand. Maybe they have to lay down. So we are actually able to modify the exercises very well, easy. So logistically, it's great. The informatics that are given, and that's what's driving the outcomes, is all these special ingredients. And then on top of that, as Alex mentioned, the Delta V, a lot of these programs, yes, if you exercise in general, you're going to improve your volumes, you're going to improve the musculature, yes. But if you target those specific muscle groups, you're...
Oh, we lost him.
Dr. Shah lost it. That's okay. It's happened live. It's really, he was trying to leave us on a cliffhanger there.
He's also a doctor. Sometimes patients call in, but I can kind of.
Well, here he comes. He's back. Let me go.
He's back. Okay.
There you go, Doc. Sorry about that. You're leaving us in suspense.
I don't know what happened. I apologize.
No, you're good. You're good.
But
So
I mean,
you were saying...
It really, we're very, Alex and I are very, very passionate about what we do. It's really about the patients. This is covered by insurances, it's covered by Medicare. And so basically we need a script from a practicing physician or a PA or a nurse practitioner to get it started. Then they will see me, make sure that they are eligible for the rehab program, and a lot of this background logistics is what Abby is kind of dealing with, and then once they see me, they'll have typically an orientation class, maybe with Alex, one of the RTs, and then they will join the group, and we do it in groups because that provides a tremendous psychological benefit to the patient, to see others that are slowly improving. It's kind of like one of my kids who's not doing so well in school, and then over time we're coaching him, or and then they're starting to get better grades, and it's like they're seeing others getting better grades, and everybody's getting better grades, and everybody's doing well, and then it's just the morale, it boosts your morale. So these are the special features of what we do and why we've been so successful at it.
Yeah, we don't know what everyone else can do, but we definitely know what we can do. I mean, these patients, the other reason why we like the group setting is, let's say you have somebody who doesn't know, who doesn't know about their disease, they don't know about what's going on, but they understand that, okay, this progressive disease is just going to get worse. Well, then I mentioned to them, I said, well, okay, so your doctor said in 10 years, that's it, your life is over, right? I said, okay, all right, I want you to think about this. If you're improving, how are you getting worse? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're improving, literally, if you're improving, how are you getting worse? Mm-hmm. You got to get that out of your head. That's a block. So you have patients that come in with end stage. Really, you have patients that come in end stage where doctors, they send us a note. It's like, this patient probably won't be with you very long just because they're end stage. I gave them about a month to live. And then you have that person that's still staying 2 years later. I'm not kidding. It was supposed to die 2 years ago, still alive. And you have these people that are just, they don't realize that pulmonary rehab is literally key. If there's a cure to COPD, I think pulmonary rehab would be the medication. Really. No, God's honest truth.
Well,
think-
we're improving the quality of the life.
Yes.
We're extending the life by improving the quality of life. And
Oh,
truly,
sure.
from the psychological component, and I think all the home health nurses, and as Dr. Shah was saying earlier, that there is certainly there's a physiological component to the disease, but there's also a psychological component to the disease. Something as simple as a patient saying, I put my oxygen for 5 minutes and I feel better, then I take it out. Well, we know clinically it doesn't have any benefit. That's the psychological benefit.
Yeah.
So that's part of what is taught as well. We're trying to overcome psychological issues to manage the physiological issues.
Absolutely. And with the increase, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, John.
No, you keep going. Keep going.
No, I was just saying, we have patients that were, I can only mention because of HIPAA regulations, I'll only mention the first name, Marianne. Remember Abby?
Mm-hmm.
Wheelchair for 6 months. 6 months, wheelchair for 6 months. This might not mean a lot to anybody, but her husband was just amazing. He just was a soldier right by her side every single time. Mm-hmm. This person was not able to walk. For 6 months, she was in a wheelchair where she got up to 672 feet, I want to say. 672 feet. That might not seem like a lot to anybody, but that was a life given back to that person.
Right.
So we have healthcare providers that we don't have healthcare. They have some patients have their own healthcare providers in their homes. Mm-hmm. And what we do to assist with that, to help out with that while we do our pulmonary rehab, is increase their clinical capabilities. When before, let's say you have a healthcare provider that comes in for an hour, maybe 2 hours, but then after that, what happens? What if you have somebody else also that also helps monitor that patient? That if they find anything in the middle of the night during our vital checks, we find anything, we report right back to you, report back to the doctor, and that patient has a good sense of well-feeling, knowing that, okay, when the healthcare provider comes over, I still have another healthcare provider that's also going to monitor me even after that. It kind of gives you a good, comfortable feeling knowing that, hey, maybe the healthcare has just got updated. It's a lot better now than it was before. I promise.
Yeah, I think a lot of what I'm hearing too is that, you remove the boundaries of the hospital, you remove the walls, and you increase options for care. And you really can be more personalized to each of the patients and what they need, because, believe it or not, even though these $1 million complexes, they limit you to what you can do. It's like, well, we invested CapEx in this machine. Guess what machine they're using? That machine, right? So it's one of these things where it sounds like when you start to remove the things that don't matter, we get to really start to focus on the things that do.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah. We found some patients actually that were coming back, that were going back and forth to the hospital with recurring pneumonia. We found that their ductwork had black mold buildup.
Sure.
We go through all these assessments. Yeah. It's, because they say every single time they go to the hospital, they feel better. They come right back home. They get it again.
Yeah.
They're catching pneumonia. They don't realize what's happening. And there was, because a lot of people don't know that their house can be spotless, but you're not really taking a look inside your ductwork. So we'll do I can, consult with one of the patients, say, grab a mold check. It's about $20 at Home Depot, but it's just it samples you just lay it on the ground and you follow the instructions, you mail it in, and they'll tell you if there's mold and what kind of mold there is. That's just one piece of information.
Wow.
Just one piece. Imagine what 3 months will do of education, of just the insight. It's just amazing what this program can do.
It's interesting you bring that up, Alex, because I think one of the beauties of virtual care, whether it's respiratory, rehab, PT, OT, whatever, we're not treating the patients in a sterile environment like the hospital, right? I mean, the patient comes into the hospital, that rehab room is pretty much sterile.
Right.
We can virtually see what's going on in that patient's home. So we get to see the environment that they're living in and how that environment may actually be impacting their healthcare.
That's right.
And their disease entity. As Alex was saying, mold's a perfect example. And, we talk about patients with asthma. I mean, asthma is triggered by rodents and bugs and things. I mean, we're able to see things that you just don't see in the hospital.
That's right.
Well, it's hard to put on your Sunday best when you're coming to the house. And
True. Very
Very
true.
We oftentimes when we're going to the doctor, we're trying to look our best, trying to tell the doctor, I know I'm guilty of it. Hey, I feel good. I'm great. And it's the access that you're gaining. It seems to be the difference maker. But I also really like that, and Alex, you were talking a lot about the softer side, the softer touch points of healthcare. We talked for many years about social determinants of care, how they're impacting, how well we can actually heal, how our bodies feel. But it's hard to measure, and it's hard to get a lot of people excited about. But y'all find that these are one of the difference makers for y'all. Correct? Is like making sure that you connect with these patients emotionally.
Absolutely, because a lot of patients, they like to go straight to medication. I'm out of breath. Let me take this medication. Well, that medication doesn't fix out of breath. Out of breath is caused by CO2 buildup. You have to ventilate better, and a lot of people don't realize that. They wish there was a book, an exercise physicist from Harvard Medical School, Barry Franklin, that is his name. And he wrote in there, if you were to take the best pharmaceutical agent that can cure depression, heart disease, pulmonary diseases, every single thing possible, everything, he says, but he said, if you could put that into a pill, you have the best pharmaceutical agent in the world. He said, something like that doesn't exist. And I was like, huh? What do you mean something like that exists? He said, yeah, it's called Begoyam. He said, you take one a day. I said, what's Begoyam? And I'm reading it, and it says, get off your butt and move.
Well,
It's
there you go.
Sit still for so long, and they haven't walked for a long time because I don't blame them. They don't feel confident. People weren't able to go upstairs for 6 months. Remember that, Abby?
Right.
There was these people that haven't gone upstairs for 6 months, and were able for them to go upstairs for the first time in 6 months. Look, that might not mean a lot to somebody, but that means a lot to us, and it definitely means a lot to that person, because that person's getting their life back, able to go outside. And yes, we take it a little personally. We kind of really love these patients a lot, but I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, you got into a field. And we've met a lot of respiratory therapists that only got in it for the money or doing something like that. Like, it's just, and when a respiratory therapist asks me, it's like, hey, can I have a job? I'm like, sure. I says, okay, let me give you a situation. If you can tackle this situation really well, I said, I might offer you a job, right? I might offer you an interview. I said, really quick, somebody can't walk from point A to point B. Let's say that point A to point B is 50 feet. They get out of breath very quickly, and their heart rate spikes really high. How would you help them? And they was like, give albuterol treatments. And I was like, sorry, I can't hire you now. I said, that's not the answer.
That's right.
For instance, I tell a lot of my patients, it's like, take a deep breath. Let's just take, in a group setting, I'm like, take a deep breath. Did you know 30% of that oxygen went to your brain, 20% went to your heart? That's 50% of every breath you've ever taken ever since you were born went to those main organs. I said, now imagine this. You have an anxiety attack. Now your brain's probably consuming more oxygen because you're overusing it. Why do you think you're out of breath when you have high anxiety? I said, you have to tackle everything as a whole, not just with like pulmonary rehab. It was okay before, but we really just transformed it because that's what we want. We want people to go into a pulmonary rehab, not needing us ever again. At least that's what we strive for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that for the home care companies that are listening to and watching this, there are two things that I'm really concerned about. And for folks that have listened to me speak for the past many years, the one thing I always recommend is that they get a respiratory therapist in the home, because respiratory therapists in one visit could probably do more than a nurse. I'm a nurse, so I can say this, a nurse can do in 5 or 6 visits. So number one, that's going to help decrease the cost of providing the care. The second thing is that dyspnea is high on the list of those functional items that we have to improve with value-based purchasing. That's not, I don't see that being done. I do QA on clinical records, and I rarely see that dyspnea improves much between start of care and discharge. It just doesn't happen because I don't believe we have the tools to work with. But then the last thing with the decreased rehospitalization. That's the other thing that home care companies really, really need to be paying attention to. And if we can improve the dyspnea, we can improve improve those outcomes, that those rehospitalization rates and those emergency rates are going to decrease. Nothing scarier, nothing more frightening than not being able to breathe. I mean, that's probably the worst
absolutely.
Yeah, worst thing that can ever happen to you. And in rushing to the emergency room, I understand why people do that. But there are things, and you're showing this right now, there are things we can do in home health to improve those items.
Dramatically, absolutely. And when speaking about a respiratory therapist, you definitely want to find a respiratory therapist that's knowledgeable in pulmonary rehabilitation.
Exactly.
Because when I went to school for respiratory care, there was the concept of knowing about pulmonary rehab, but there was no education about it. So it was mostly on the job training. But what if the respiratory therapist went to a facility that the on the job training was just subpar? And then that person is trying to develop themselves in their career to help those patients, but they have no idea how to help those people because the education or training wasn't there for that. It was just, here, take a medication, that's it.
Right.
That's not what respiratory therapy is. That's not what it is. It's respiratory therapy. It's helping those people that can't breathe, not just with medication, but helping people cough better, helping people get their life back.
Yeah.
And Arlene, if I can interject one thing, Arlene, that you and I were talking about this. I mean, I wrote a white paper and gave a lecture in Vegas about respiratory therapy in skilled facilities, and then following those patients home from skilled facilities to home, and our readmission rates were dramatically decreased. Hospitals, we were partnering with hospitals, and we became a partner because we were no longer sending patients back to the hospital by managing. And I think one of the things that we can do through virtual services is, if you don't have the ability to bring on a respiratory therapist, although I think from the white paper that we wrote, we can show a tremendous savings by keeping the patient at home and out of the hospital, just with the cost of a therapy.
Sure.
Also virtually. Respiratory therapists, we can be virtual. We can provide a virtual service to the home health agencies through video and see the things that we need to see, make the recommendations that need to be made. I think we're living in a world now where a lot of patients are discharged from the hospital. Their medical equipment is shipped to them. It arrives on their porch. They have to bring it in themselves and try to hook it up. Well, the virtual therapist can actually assist with that as well and make sure that the patient is getting the appropriate therapy from day one when they go home, not waiting for the home health agency to send the nurse in maybe 2 or 3 days later. So, I mean, there's a lot of ability to work together for the improvement of the patient and improve the outcomes.
Sure. And nurses, I think we just automatically think a pill is going to take care of everything. An inhaler is going to take care of it. If you're not using the inhaler right, if you don't know how to use an inhaler, it's not going to help you at all.
Right.
So, that's the other thing that I learned a number of years ago. I mean, you've got to have, there's a way to use an inhaler. And typically you go to the drugstore, they hand you a bag with the inhalers in there. They say, do you have any questions? You say no. And you walk home and try to use it, and it's not really effective.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the other is when you see the doctor has 15 minutes to see each patient.
That's right.
It's the I Love Lucy chocolate conveyor belt, right? And so who's going to teach the patient? Who's going to show the patient, really? So some of these YouTube videos, I'm not sure if they do justice. So it's like, is there a program that will kind of do it all? And that's kind of Home Rehab Network. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up is sometimes providers may say, well, this patient is too severe, or maybe it's not severe enough. We've had patients who are on 10 liters of oxygen. We have patients who are pre-transplant, post-transplant. For us, and I'm kind of directing this into the online space where you say, well, maybe this person is not good for online. I just want to make sure that people understand there is no severity that we have not handled.
Interesting.
During our last, I don't know, 5+ years, we've had, from the university level of patients being, like I said, 10+ liters. I mean, 15 liters and we even see patients with trachs, and to your point of respiratory therapist in the home, number one, and therapy without walls, number two. I think, when I was a fellow, when we were doing critical care, there was a concept of critical care without walls. And that means we could go to the regular floor and set up kind of a MASH unit in that bed on the regular floor, or we could go to another, maybe on the OB ward or some other ward and kind of do it. So we can do that with our therapists, kind of cross-train them in different aspects. On top of that, we can, and Alex does this a lot, he'll provide 15 minutes to half hour or whatever the need is of a virtual therapist, for whatever training purposes or trach training purposes or vent training purposes or oxygen training purposes. We're able to do that as well.
I'm willing to guess that 90% of the home care and hospice too, but home care patients do not have respiratory therapy of any kind. I mean,
Right.
they have a nurse go in, maybe they listen to the lungs, they check the SaO2, and other than that, I mean, there's, cough and deep breathe. Yeah, they may give them a little instruction on that. My guess, my hunch is a very large percent of patients who do not get what they deserve with a program like yours. I
agree.
Yeah. So how did the patients pay for this, Tim?
So Abby, you want to talk about the intake and the reimbursement side of this?
Yeah. So our program is insurance based. So we are covered by Medicare, most major insurances. If a patient comes to us, we do our absolute best to get them approved, to get an authorization. Because it is a telehealth piece, we have tremendous success getting them these approvals because there is no other option in their network. A lot of times the insurance companies will look, is there a pulmonary rehab within 20 miles of this patient's home? Most of the time, 99% of the time, the answer is no. There's no other in-network provider. And it's not very hard to convince them when you say this patient's on 3 liters of oxygen. They live 30 miles away from the nearest pulmonary rehab. Can you please approve them to see our doctors virtually? So it's usually not too difficult for us to do that. So it is insurance based. Now, after the insurance sessions have elapsed, we do offer a maintenance program where patients can pay out of pocket. And I would say at least half of our patients choose to do that and stay with us to come once a week. Probably one of our biggest problems is actually having patients let go. They want to stay in our program for years because they make these deep friendships. They want to come into class and see their friends. They're constantly, they create their own group texts. They have their own, Zoom sessions. Like it is kind of a family for them. So we have a very, very, very hard time kicking them out. So a lot of them choose to stay in maintenance.
Yeah, I have one patient actually just called me right now. Olivia, did you want to say something?
Yes, Alex, hello. I just wanted to say how ill I was before I started with Home Rehab Network. And it's just given me my life back, hope for the future. Explaining about how our lungs work and all the respiratory muscle exercises, which I had no idea, we had to do that.
Do you feel like you're getting better?
Oh, much better. I've got my confidence back. I was just stuck at home, very down and depressed all the time. And now I've got my life back.
Right.
There's a lot of work to be done, but you just keep going.
Wow.
Olivia,
It's
you
wonderful.
don't ever stop being you, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I a lot of this seems like you said that y'all are taking pulmonary respiratory therapy to the next level, and it really seems a lot about the process too. that you thought about every hole that there was and tried to come up with a solution. Whereas, I don't think a lot of providers are doing that these days. We just kind of keep doing the same thing over and over again. Let's not try to change anything. Let's not try to fix anything. And y'all really put some big answers to some questions that have kind of been out there for a while.
Well, and just to that point, John, so, when Alex started in the beginning, he said we met at this, nursing home conglomerate where we were doing pulmonary rehab. The program grew out of patient need. It did not grow out of monetary outcomes. Okay. So I think that's a testament to where it started and where it is and where it's going. Because when we started, there were no virtual pulmonary rehab codes. We had to create those rehab codes. So that tells you right there, this is patient-oriented rehab, and that's kind of a testament to our success. So,
and are y'all working with Abby? You were talking about insurance. Are y'all working with military as well?
We do. We work with TRICARE. We are slowly getting into different areas of the VA all around the country. So that's definitely something that we can work with. And
it seems like our military vets probably could utilize this
Absolutely.
a lot, especially when we're talking about the social determinants, and we know about the different issues of surrounding the VA right now, that they could use all the help they could get. And so again, this is just another opportunity. It sounds like it would be more than just rehab, but a lot of social connections as well.
Right.
Yeah, and I think on the the logistical side on our end, kind of in the office, we know what the purpose of pulmonary rehab is. We know what they're going to be doing when they get into our program. For the patients, they don't understand that. So when we first talk to them, the first 1 or 2 phone calls, for them it's they're nervous. How do I get on Zoom? They have 100 million questions. They have no idea what they're about to experience. So for us, it's that psychological aspect is so important, because you have to get them to start. You have to get them to the first day. That's the hardest part. Once they see 1 or 2 classes, they're sold. They have no problem being compliant, coming to class 3 times a week. It's getting them from the first call of your doctor referred you to that first class. And that's where a lot of that kind of creating a connection with them beyond just, your patient 18275, here's your class time. So I think the reason we get patients to be so compliant is because of our office staff, because they really do take an interest in each patient's life. We get to know their husbands, their wives, their children, whoever's calling the office. And that's how we kind of keep them, engaged, and keeps our compliance rate way higher than a traditional facility. If someone's having a bad day, they're depressed, all of a sudden it's class time, they're not showing up on camera. It's a lot easier to call them and talk them through something and help them get on Zoom than it is to get them to get in their car and drive 20 miles.
Sure.
So to get them compliant coming to class is tremendously easier. And of course, they're the ones benefiting from the compliance. So we want them to come 3 times a week. We want them to do things outside of class. And it's so much easier, when we can get them virtually onto our Zoom platform than it is to encourage them to drive 30 miles or have a family member have to drive them. Whereas this way, their daughter comes over, turns on Zoom for them, and boom, now they can get the care they need. So just in that sense, logistically, it's so much easier for them.
And you have like a 90% compliance rate. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have 98.7% compliance rate.
Oh, wow.
Which is just amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that, at the end of the day, we see that hospitalization helps patients because there's so much attention, and we have professionals making sure that the procedures, the medication, whatever is being done correctly. So I think this goes, the compliance piece is huge, but it's also that you're able to get in there, and you're also establishing right from the get-go, like, hey, well, this is a team thing, right? We're doing this together. But the frequency and the education, it seems like, is a huge part of that compliance and why you're keeping these patients coming back.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And virtual seems a little misleading. There was the AARC did that's the American Association of Respiratory Care, for just in case no one knows. They did a study in August. It was very recent, and there was a lot of people that have lung disease going on to like YouTube. Not putting YouTube down. I'm just saying they went onto YouTube and trying to look at videos to help them. And so they did a study with a large amount of demographics, just a large amount of people. And the study the results of the study were that the success rates, meaning people that actually improved, were all the way down to 3%. And the reason why, because a lot of people like to do that because, hey, it's free, I get to do that, but they don't realize they make those extremely safe for a large conglomerate of people, like 100,000 people. They, like what we do is, like, first off, we're not pre-recorded. We do it live. Virtual is we do it through Zoom, so I'm able to see you, you're able to see me. I can see if you're breathing deep enough, all that jazz, right? So on YouTube, that when they were doing the study on YouTube, they found that the programs that they were doing, like a lot of the clinicians there weren't clinicians.
Sure.
They weren't licensed. They were not clinicians. They found a lot of them. So there was no justification. And a lot of people actually were doing something. I remember it was a household cleaner they were using. And the study's there. I'm not making this stuff up. I guess these people were looking at this doctor from a different country, and they found out it wasn't a doctor. And these people, like, there was 4 people that died from the results of this. What they did, yeah. It was like 4 people that died from using that. So what we do is, we don't treat a patient like they're 100,000 people. We treat them as one individual. We have to know exactly just like Dr. Shah stated, we have to know if they have a bad hip, if they have a bad back, if they have anxiety issues, if they're depressed, how far can you walk? We treat them as an individual because that's who they are. Sure. We don't look at it as 100,000 people trying to make it safe for 100,000 people so there's no liability problems. No, we treat people exactly who they are. You're not a number, you're a name.
It's all about improving the lives that we touch with these patients every day, right? I mean, that's really the goal. It's improving their quality of life.
And it sounds as if, going back to what you were saying, Dr. Shah, that if you were just doing it for billable visits, right, we wouldn't go above and beyond to say, the test just keeps coming back in my mind, just because my definition of responsibility is, do you have the ability to respond, right? That's very simple. That's what I tell my children. Like, do you have the ability to respond? Yes. Then you're responsible until you pass it off to somebody else. And it's like, if you're saying, I'm responsible for your outcomes of your care, then why wouldn't these other things be also, affecting or be a part of it? Why wouldn't I want to fix it? Now I'm responsible. And I feel that with y'all, that you're really kind of taking that holistic approach, which most people are just so narrowed down on what's billable.
It boils down to one word, right? I mean, it boils down to passion. And I think that everybody on this screen has passion about how we're taking care of patients. And I'm a firm believer that if you take care of patients the right way and you show the passion and all the things that go along with passion, that it comes back to you tenfold. Sure. Whether, whatever that tenfold is, it improves improving the quality of someone's life is just something you cannot put a dollar amount to.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Absolutely. It's funny also too is Tim is actually ex-military and I'm ex-military. We didn't just fight for our country, we're also fighting for the lives of people, trying to just to make an impact in people's lives so they can get their life back. We have people that weren't able to go back to work, and they were able to go back to work because that's what they wanted. We had people that went on vacation, that's the one person on the phone. It just blew me out of the water. I really do love my patients. I really, really do. But it's
and I can say about the VA. I mean, the VA is certainly right now they're trialing a program that's an inpatient program, an in-house program in Texas, with the ability to look out and say, okay, if we can do pulmonary rehab in a facility, can we farm it out? And they farm out all their services. So we think we're on the front line to be able, having some experience with the government, being able to work with them to say, look, here's a program that works. We know that one of the areas of the country it's going to be tested in first is going to be Tennessee. We have some great relationships with the VA in Tennessee. So we see ourselves being able to provide a service to them as well. So,
and it is about finding all the areas around, that can support these patients. Pulmonary rehab, one part. You do need physical therapy in a lot of these patients, right? They have a physical therapy need. They have a primary care need, right? And so it's really the ability to care coordinate. And I think virtual and technology is allowing us to be able to do care coordination so much better. But it's about knowing, everybody has a place and where to go and how to fit in. And I think that's been the hardest place for me over the past 12 years or whatever, is when you have a new technology or a new program, is getting everybody to believe in it, because everybody can be so, fixed in one area. But I'm guessing that when they see your data, they start to open up a lot more, because these are impressive numbers.
Yeah. And we also, we also send reports to the referring physicians, and if the patient wants their primary physician, the pulmonologist, the cardiologist, and if they have an oncologist, like whoever they want the report to go to, we will send out monthly reports on their progress.
That's awesome.
And so one of the data points, to Arlene's point, was our Borg scale, which is our dyspnea scale, our shortness of breath scale. And so we do a baseline Borg scale, and then monthly we'll do another one and then another one. And so we're monitoring those scales as well, how far they can walk in 6 minutes, also known as a 6-minute walk test, their pulse oxes, their vitals in general. So we're monitoring these things, and then we're reporting back to the physicians that are referring, so that they are kept up to date on, how's Mrs. Smith doing? How, is this really working from their perspective? Because they're not in the program, they're referring to it. So this is the kind of the link for them. The other part of this is, some of the larger referrers, they can just call us up. They'll call Abby up or email us and say, hey, I need so-and-so in tomorrow, or like at ASAP. Okay. Doctor so-and-so will oblige. We'll get those patients in as soon as possible. So we're very personable on that level as well.
So is there anywhere that in the country that y'all are not able to serve, or you really can go, since you're virtual, you pretty much go any state, right?
We've had patients in Hawaii. We've had patients in Alaska, Puerto Rico, anywhere in the continental U.S., anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah. And I guess technically, if they were in a different country, but they lived here, they could probably do a session with somebody too, right? I mean,
we've had patients in Australia, England, Canada, Belarus,
everywhere.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to the compliance. It's like, which one? Okay, I planned a trip to Belarus 2 years ago or a year ago, right? And then all of a sudden, I end up in the hospital. Now, am I going to have to miss that because I need inpatient rehab or whatever? No, I can take my rehab with me.
Yep.
Yeah, we have snowbirds too. So we have snowbirds who go from, Maine or New York and down to Florida. When they park their RVs, they'll be doing Home Rehab Network, in their RV.
Yep.
So, that's just really the beauty of this, is that you can kind of take it wherever you go. I mean, it's virtual, it's wherever you want to be, and
Absolutely.
So there's no excuse then. That kind of puts the onus on the person too. So it's like, you really don't have that excuse now. You gotta get up and do this. So,
and I'm sure it's different for every patient, but when, how often or how soon do y'all see the patient starting to get that positive energy back, or that turnaround, or starting to see progress?
Yeah, I say within 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Alex, you think so, but for me, definitely, I say 2 weeks. And I don't mean that 2 weeks they'll be running the New York Marathon. What I mean is they will actually start to feel like, wait a minute, there's a turning point here. There's an inflection here, and I'm actually starting to feel better. So I definitely say 2 weeks. So it's not that long. It's not really that long. But
you do remember that one patient that did that wasn't able to walk very far, did the 5K.
Oh yeah,
wow. He ran the marathon. Yeah. It was like it's not like the Boston Marathon, but
Right.
Remember that?
But from not walking to running a marathon would be the difference between me running the Boston Marathon, because I don't even think I can run 5K. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
His doctor impressive. Called us up too.
That's right.
Said, "What did you do?"
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, I remember that, where a patient was not able to do anything, and the patient actually walked to the doctor's office. It was like a few miles with the son. Remember?
And he called us. He called us and said,
"Yeah,
what did you do to our patient?"
Yeah, he says, "Well, I don't know what you did, but you got my vote." You know, it was it's just the transformation with what good therapy can do, but the team is what does it. You know, It's a team. Good expertise in a team, not just one person. It wasn't me. It was all of us that made this just something the world needed, you know, not just.
And it sounds like y'all are just getting started too.
Well, I think we are, as we're now blending these two organizations together with Lifetime Vitality and Home Rehab Network. Mm-hmm. We're taking the best of both worlds now and just molding them together and growing in leaps and bounds. So it's an exciting opportunity for all of us.
So as we're getting kind of close to the top of the hour, let's make sure that everybody knows how to get a hold of y'all, what's the best way to go, what's the best process, and we can make sure that we get it all up there.
Abby, you want to take that?
Yeah. One, you can go to our website, which you can just go to homerehabnetwork.com. On there, if a patient wants to submit their information, we get that information and we can reach back out to you. An NP, PA, MD, anyone can submit a patient referral right on our website. You can even upload face sheets, demographics, notes, anything right through our portal. You can also reach us at our phone number and our fax number, which is all on our website. And you could even send a referral via email. You can call a referral coordinator. So there's a bunch of different ways to refer. We don't want to make that the challenge in part. We want to get the patient in. A lot of doctors, like Dr. Shah said, will call and say, hey, there's this patient so-and-so. We do the legwork. We call the medical records department. We get the medical records obtained. So we really try to make it as seamless as possible for our referring providers. It's more important for us that we get the patient into the program. Once they're ready, it's so nice to have them start in the next 2 or 3 days because they keep their interest, and then, we keep it going with them and they start right away. Sometimes with traditional facilities, when they're waiting 3 weeks, you've already lost their interest. And now, the patient is kind of checked out. So that's really important. And all of our information is on our website at homerehabnetwork.com.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate y'all coming on and telling us all about Home Rehab Network, Lifetime Vitality, this new merge. And again, this sounds amazing. It sounds like there's a lot of opportunity for not only companies to partner with y'all to start seeing their patient population have better outcomes, but just individuals should be reaching out if they need some real pulmonology rehab. So anyway, thank you guys so much for coming on. I appreciate it. And we hope to have y'all maybe back on soon to talk about all the updates and any new
great.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for watching another episode of Off the Cuff, all things rehab, all things healthcare. My name is John Kublank, and we have Arlene Maxim, the best nurse on the planet. And as always, we appreciate you, and we will see y'all next week. Thanks.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye.